Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 303. Today we're going to talk about the Sheriff of Nottingham. See, I'm already starting to laugh. So this game is really, really funny. Okay, so I can't help it. I'm sorry. I need to maintain my composure and act like a professional. So, what is the gist of this game? Well, each player takes a turn being the sheriff, and you're sort of like the gatekeeper, if you will, at the border of town. And all the other players are trying to sneak into town, possibly, with contraband, illegal sort of packages of goods. And the winner at the end of the day, at the end of the game, is going to be the one with the most money. So you maybe will try to catch the sheriff and catch him off guard, and he inspects your bag when he shouldn't inspect it, or he inspects it and catches you with contraband, so you got to like pay a fine kind of thing. So let's take a look at it. It's got a lot of good buzz at Gen Con, and then I'll come back and tell you more what I think of it. So here you can see all of the components in the game. Each player is going to get a little player board in their color, and they're going to be depicting different merchants here. So this is like a chef or a cook, and here we've got sort of a, I don't know, maybe a jester type of looking guy. And then each player gets a bag in their color, and in this bag you will be inserting these cards and trying to sneak them past the sheriff. Now one player will get this giant sheriff marker, and that is going to be the current player that is the sheriff for that round. So let's say you're playing a 3-player game. The blue player maybe will be the sheriff. So he's not going to worry anything about his bag. He's not going to be trying to sneak any goods through anybody. The yellow and the green player in this case will be trying to sneak goods through him. Or not necessarily always trying to sneak the goods. They could be trying to make the sheriff think that they're sneaking the goods, and then the sheriff will kind of do, let's call it an illegal inspection of whatever goods are in their bag. Now, the game does come with this sort of removable insert, which is actually pretty nice, because in the game, you're going to have a draw stack, and then you're going to seed some cards into the 2 discard piles. But I will tell you right up front, I hate using this tray. So I will not be using that tray when I play with it. However, this tray here that contains the money is actually pretty nice. So you're going to get some coins to start. You get 50 bucks to start. It's good, nice, thick, cardboard money, all the way up to the 50s here. And you're going to play the game a number of times. Now with 3 players, you're going to play until everybody's been the sheriff 3 times. Each round, the sheriff's going to kind of move around the table. If you're playing with 4 or 5, you play until everybody's been the sheriff 2 times. Now there is a time limit on the round. So there's a little bit of sort of negotiation period that's going to happen, and that is basically equal to the number of other players from the sheriff. So in a 3-player game, this sheriff would have 2 minutes, 1 minute for yellow and 1 minute for green, to make their decision. So how does a turn work? Well, to start the game, everybody gets 6 of these cards in their hand, and there's all kinds of cards here. But there's 2 basic types. You have your green border cards, and these are your legal goods. You've got like bread and apples and all kinds of good stuff. And then you also have contraband, and these are in red. So mead, pepper for some reason is illegal, all kinds of good stuff here. So you're going to have a hand of 6 of these cards, and then you can go to market. And when you do that, let's say this was my hand here. That's 5, 6 cards, and I didn't really want to deal with contraband, so I'm going to set aside 3 cards, like so, and then I'm going to draw cards. And here's why I don't like this tray. Because you're able to peek and look down the discard pile and see what's in there. So let's say I really wanted to get at this bread here. So I set aside 3 cards, then I could draw these cards out of the discard pile. But if you want to get that 3rd card down, you've got to kind of like draw through it. So you have to get everything on top of it and then add that to your hand. So what we usually do is we'll take these out of here like so, and then we'll just lay everything out so that you can see what's there. So you can see all the names of the cards, and that way you can very quickly discern what's available for you and what you want. So that's nice for storing the cards, but not for using it in play. So that's the first phase of the market. You're going to go in turn order, set aside a certain number of cards, and then draw cards. Now, you always have to draw cards off of these discard piles first if you want to, and then after that, if you still have more cards to draw, to get back up to 6 cards, then you can draw off the top here. Then you take and discard the cards that you set aside, and everybody should be back up to 6 cards. Now you can set aside a maximum of 5 cards during this market phase. Everybody does that, and then everybody's going to secretly load goods into their merchant bag. Now, what the sheriff should have been doing was watching what cards the players have taken, from the pile. So they know that I went for the bread, so maybe I'm pretending that I want the bread, maybe I really want the bread, all kinds of good stuff. So the sheriff's got to get a read. And the other players should be keeping an eye too, because you're going to be negotiating with the sheriff, trying to kind of sway him. So after you've inserted cards into your bag, you're going to have a declaration. Now, let's pretend a couple of scenarios here. So let's say I put 4 cards in my bag. I put these 2 apples and these 2 cheese in there. I'm going to put this in my bag. And then the other thing that I'm very nervous about with these bags is this little snapper. Now the rules say you're supposed to snap it shut and then you can't change it. Now we played it where you just have to lay it down with the sign face up, and that's your declaration that you're done, putting this stuff in the bag. I am concerned that this will peel off one day. It is a little bit difficult, at least with this copy. It may not be every copy, to open this, so I have a feeling that it might tear. And so instead of snapping it and keeping the the component nice for years, hopefully, I'm not going to snap this shut. So let's say I put that in here, and I've got what did I put in here? 2 bread and 2 apples. Is that right? I forgot already. Yes, 2 apples and 2 bread. And then I have to declare, and I have to be truthful about the number of cards. So I've got to say 4. And your declaration can only include legal goods. So I can say, hey, I put 4 apples in, because you can only declare 1 type. Even though I'm trying to get 2 types across, in the world here of Nottingham, you're only allowed to bring in 1 type of good kind of per shipment. So even though I'm trying to sneak 2 in, I have to kind of lie and say, hey, I'm bringing in 4 apples or 4 bread. Then everybody does the same thing. So maybe some people will try to sneak contraband in. So after everybody has declared, and you have to, again, be truthful by the number and declare 1 legal type, then we have a bit of inspection. So again, in this particular scenario, we would have 2 minutes. This particular player would have 2 minutes, and they have to decide who they're going to inspect. And you can threaten, you can make promises, you can bribe. So maybe the green player tells the blue player, who's the sheriff, guess what, I'll give you $5 if you don't look at my bag and you look at yellow's bag. And then yellow can argue back and forth. If there was like a 3rd or 4th and 5th player, you can kind of make deals. Hey, guess what, as yellow, I'll give you $5. Purple will chip in $5. You don't look at ours, you look at green, back and forth, back and forth. I've had games where somebody tells you, hey, I'll give you $5 to look at my bag. So now what's going to happen is, after the sheriff has decided who he's going to look at, then he's going to look at it. Now if you were not truthful, so remember we said we put 4 apples in here. So let's open this up. The sheriff decided to inspect, in this case himself, but I'm just doing an example. So we said 4 apples. Well, these 2 apples were legal. We declared it, but these 2 cheese were not. Now, since these are technically illegal, you have to pay a penalty to the sheriff equal to this red number. Now at the end of the game, these are going to be worth this much gold at the end of the game. So I can go ahead and put here the apples next to my player board. You can see here we have little spots here for the 4 different legal goods. We've got apples, cheese, chicken, and bread. So these come in legally. These get discarded by the sheriff, wherever he wants on the discard piles here, and then we would have to pay the sheriff $4. Now, let's say this was 2 other apples here. So we did smuggle in 4 apples, and we were perfectly legal, and the sheriff didn't believe us. He wanted to check us anyway. Well, then the sheriff has to pay us a penalty, because lo and behold, we were being truthful, and so the sheriff in this case had to pay $8 to us. So you kind of try to fake the sheriff out a little bit to get him to look where he shouldn't be looking. Now you're going to go and do that for everybody that the sheriff wishes to inspect. The sheriff doesn't have to inspect anybody if he doesn't want to. Now if you're able to get contraband through, these are the red cards, you're going to go ahead and put these face down here. Now, for some reason you don't have enough money to pay the penalties, you can give goods, based on the value. You can even give contraband and stuff like that. And so you're going to do that over a certain number of rounds, and you're going to add up all of the money on all of the goods that you're able to successfully smuggle or ship in, and then whoever has the most money is going to be the winner. And again, you start with $50, so you maybe have that left over, hopefully, from all your negotiations. And then you're going to draw back up to 6 cards at the end of each round, and then go back into a market phase where you kind of swap cards. Everybody's kind of keeping an eye on each other, and then load the bags and try to lie or try to pretend like you're lying. Now there's a couple other little nooks and crannies here. So if we look at the player boards, you can see there are these numbers here next to each of these types of goods. So what this means here is whoever has the most most apples at the end of the game gets 20 extra bucks, and whoever has second most gets 10. And then same with cheese, 15 and 10, 10 and 5 for the chickens, 15 and 10 for the bread. Now the chickens by themselves are worth more, and there's less of them, so you get a little bit better deal there. And there's a lot of apples, but they're not worth quite as much. You can see they're only worth $2 at the end of the game. So there's going to be some interesting dynamics that are going to happen. It's not just about, oh, do I have contraband or not, or am I lying about what I have in my bag? But as players sort of amass, majorities in the different goods, that's really going to affect the dynamic of the game. Now there are also here these royal goods here, and these are basically just like your basic apples, for example. So these are some royal apples, and this counts as 3 apples. Now it's still contraband, but at the end of the game you get to flip this up and reveal it, and this will count not only the $6, but it'll also count towards your total. So this will count as 3 apples. So that's a nice little surprise as well. The guy thinks, oh, if I get one more apple, I'll tie them, and then we have to split the difference, and then you go, ha, surprise, I got a royal apple there. Now there are also, I had one here, oh yes, this one here, these are some of the promo cards. You'll be able to get these here with these blue bands. I would actually say not to play with the promos because they are a little bit swingy. And I would say get some games in without the promos first. We just dove right in and played with the promos, and there are a couple things. It was just a little bit like, it was fine. I mean, the game is light and funny and stuff, but I would say if you really want to get all number crunchy about it, play without the promos your first few times, or get to know what the promos are, because I got really jacked by a promo yesterday, actually. And speaking of which, if you really want to get card county and probability, work that into your negotiations, all this is here on the back of the instruction book. But that's pretty much how you play Sheriff of Nottingham. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. First, I got to mention why I was starting to laugh at the beginning of the video. This game, it lends itself to innuendo. There's just going to be dirty jokes flying. I experienced that with my own group, and I talked to some folks who got a chance to play this at Gen Con, and it was just like this and that, and like stuff I don't even want to repeat on YouTube. So that's fun. I mean, that's always fun to just kind of horse around. But the game itself, like mechanically and all that kind of good stuff, is very, very cool. So the gist of it is, you might play with players that are a little bit sort of tight-fisted, like they never want to get contraband, they never lie, this and that. So you're like, well, you're boring to play with. You're always just, oh, I got these, I'm digging for the apple so I can get the most apples and this and that. And then they're going to switch on you right at the instant, and just as you think they're like never going to lie. And then it's a free-for-all, and then everybody's into it. So this is going to be a great game that will last within a certain group confine. As you play with each other and get to know each other's little tricks, maybe I pulled a fast one on you, yesterday, last time we played. You think I'm kind of pulling the same maneuver, the same sort of, verbal linguistics to get around you, but maybe I'll flip it on its head. So that's really, really cool, and that's really what the heart of the game is trying to fake out the sheriff and fake out the other players as well. And I do like the sort of the economics of the game, the real basic, but they do add to the dynamics of the negotiation because there's more apples, and the chickens are a little bit more, and you're trying to get the majorities, and maybe you're trying to sneak that one piece of contraband. I played one game where I was like, okay, I'm gonna discard 2 cards, and I took 2 contraband. They just saw me. That was the only 2 cards I took, was just the contraband. And then they started calling me, on my lying, and I just played a straight face, played the truth, and I was able to milk a little bit of stuff out of there. And then I never even used that contraband, but I used some contraband that I drew off the top of the deck later that helped me get like the majority of apples. So you can play mind games like that, and so that that really adds to the game. Now I will say doesn't really matter, but the promo cards that I have, they are kind of swingy and stuff. Like you can do it, and it'll say like, oh hey, if you I can't remember exactly what was the wording, but it's like, oh, you got caught investigating when you shouldn't have inspected the bag, now pay an extra 8 gold. Like what? Holy cow. I had calculated in my head, what it was worth because, Billy and Bobby over here paid me 10. So I knew, well, if I lose, I'll only end up like, losing $2 out of the, transaction overall. But then I got hammered by the promo card. But I think after, I'm gonna keep them, you know, and then throw them in after we played a lot more, so we can just have that little dynamic to change the game up a little bit. So yeah, I mean, great production. I kind of bagged on the inserts a little bit, but it's a good idea. You know, I think some people will actually like it, but we like to kind of spread everything out. So anyway, highly recommend the game. It's really one you got to experience at least once in your life, I would say, because it has an addictive quality. You know, I want that next round to happen so I can try to BS Billy or Tommy or whatever and try to get one over on them and see how that works. And you know, it's almost like we had one guy playing yesterday. He freaking put contraband in there every single time. So I was like, no, he's not going to do it this time. Oh, he did it again, you know. So it's a nice, good, it's a party game. It only plays up to 5, but it has that party attitude, which is great. Sheriff of Nottingham, take a look at it. Thanks.